is Alysia Griego, and I'm here to talk about conversion today. To start, we have to define that term. What is conversion? According to the Catechism of the Catholic Church, conversion is a radical reorientation of your whole life, turning to God with your whole heart. To me, conversion is that complete 180 spin. Your life was going one way, and now your life is someplace totally different because of God. So, knowing the definition of that term, when Selena first approached me to do this talk, if I'm being honest, I almost turned her down. It's not that I've never experienced a huge conversion moment. I have, but I feel like it's been years since I experienced it, that huge 180 spin. And I didn't want to talk about something that happened 4 years ago or even a couple of years ago. It didn't feel authentic to where my life was now. So, I was going to say no. I don't have anything to speak about right now on the topic of conversion. But I also didn't want to make a rash decision, and I wanted to discern the idea before just saying no. Coincidentally, when she asked me, I was on my way to a pre-Cana retreat. My husband and I belong to the pre-Cana team to prepare couples for marriage in the Catholic Church. Every year, the team goes on a retreat to bond. So I told Selena that I was going out of town, but I would let her know at the end of the weekend. Part of the retreat is adoration every evening. So that first night, I went into adoration ready to discern this talk. I feel like I often go into adoration with my own agenda. I go in knowing what I want to talk to God about. And I often have in my head the answer He's going to give me. So I went into adoration that night with an agenda. I was going to talk to God about speaking here, and I was going to say no. I have nothing to talk about. I haven't had a major conversion lately. As you can assume, because I'm here, God had a different plan, as is often the case. In adoration, I had the usual conversation with God that was mostly me talking and stating the things that I want. God is such a gentleman. He lets me rant and say what I need to say. But when I was done, God had His time to speak. And I heard just a small thought. What about conversion in the everyday? I had never really thought about that concept before. Conversion is the big moments encountering God. But what if it was just an encounter with God, big or small? This made me think of the story of the Transfiguration. In Matthew's Gospel, it says, Jesus took Peter, James, and John, his brother, and led them up a high mountain by themselves. And he was transfigured before them. His face shone like the sun, and his clothes became white as light. And behold, Moses and Elijah appeared to them, conversing with him. Then Peter said to Jesus in reply, Lord, it is good that we are here. If you wish, I will make 3 tents, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. While he was still speaking, behold, a bright cloud cast a shadow over them. Then from the cloud came a voice that said, This is my beloved Son, with whom I am well pleased. Listen to him. Matthew chapter 7, verses 1 through 5. As they are coming down from the mountain, Peter, James, and John asked Jesus about why Elijah had to come before the Messiah. And Jesus said, Elijah has already come, and they did not recognize him, but did to him whatever they pleased. So also will the Son of Man suffer at their hands. I think in the story of the Transfiguration, we get caught up in the Transfiguration part. Who wouldn't? It was an incredible event. To the point where Peter asks to stay on the mountain. However, as they are coming down, Jesus reminds them that despite this miraculous event, he is going to have to suffer, and so were they. But the suffering wasn't without its God moments either. Peter goes on to become the first pope and lead our church. It couldn't have been easy, but he had God with him always. Thinking about the cyclical nature of the Transfiguration, followed by suffering, followed by the recognition that God is in the suffering, I started thinking about encountering God after the huge conversion moment. Even still, I grappled with the idea. I didn't feel like I had encounters with God worth sharing. I don't really have any major suffering that led me to God. So I left adoration that day, not sure what I had to talk about, but also knowing that God was calling me here. I kept coming back to that question. what does conversion look like in the everyday? So I started to think, what is everyday for me? I'm a teacher in a Catholic school. I teach middle school literature and religion. Often, as a religion teacher, I struggle with the question of how to reach students spiritually. Helping 11 to 14-year-olds develop a relationship with Jesus is not always easy. And even when it's not teaching religion, but literature, I often feel like this job is too much to handle. Most days, I come home feeling like I have failed. But I know God is in the little things. The 7th grade sang in Mass today, a literal miracle. Susie finally understands a concept she's been working toward for months. A parent thanked me for the work that I was doing to help their child. I'm going to be honest, I don't always see those little things. And they are hard to see. But when I do feel like I'm at a breaking point, and when I start Googling other jobs that I could do, I start to pray. And I come back to those little things. Every single one of those little things is a God moment, pushing me to continue the work I know was meant for me. I'm also a newlywed. I've been married for just over a year, and in the process of becoming a wife, I've learned so much about the everyday. All of a sudden, love isn't about the big, grand gestures of flowers and dates and spoils. It's about the everyday, the chores, the upkeep of the house, making dinner when you don't feel like it. Often, marriage mirrors our relationship with God. Sometimes marriage is wonderful and awesome, and you feel on top of the world, and sometimes it's hard, and you don't always feel loved or seen by the other person, but you're still in it. It is the transfiguration story in miniature. The wedding day is like being at the top of the mountain, and you want to stay there forever. But after that awesome moment, you do have to come down the mountain, and there's suffering in that. But the suffering isn't all bad. There's magic in going through every day with someone. And again, when I'm not seeing the good, the blessing in the everyday, I start to pray, and God shows me those little things. Recently, I found out that I'm pregnant. I'm 20 weeks, so the halfway point. I don't really understand the women who love being pregnant. If you're one of those women, please tell me what your secret is. For me, pregnancy has been difficult to say the least. There are a ton of symptoms ranging from nausea to fatigue to emotions running rampant. Mostly I feel like my body is not my own. I don't feel like myself. However, in that suffering, I also see joy. I feel blessed to be able to have this experience when at one point in my life I didn't think I was going to be able to. Also, I've learned a lot about service. That feeling that my body is not my own, but I know that it's being used to create a whole life, which is pretty cool. And ultimately, our lives are not our own. They are God's, and we are meant for the service of others. The everyday for me in prayer is not always super fruitful. I try to listen to the daily readings every morning, and sometimes I listen to them and realize that I've actually been asleep this whole time, and I have no idea what the readings were. I try to pray throughout the day, but sometimes I find that it's more complaining than anything else. Or I get to the end of the day and realize I didn't think about God once today. I go to Mass every Sunday, but let's be honest, sometimes the homily doesn't inspire you or speak to what you are going through right now. Mass is not always magical. Sometimes it's a struggle to stay focused. Or even an adoration. Sometimes I leave in tears with the feeling that I know exactly what I need to do now. And other times I leave feeling like I've just spent an hour and have nothing. Spiritual life has its ups and downs. Despite the downs, I know that God is walking with me. In each of the hats that I wear every day, and in my spiritual life, I struggle to see God in the little moments. And often I feel like I'm so far from God. But what brings me back are those times that I am on my knees ready to give up, and I ask to see those little things. And in thinking about conversion, I don't feel the 180 spin every day, but it's all of those little things that add up together that make me realize that God's presence is in everything. Sometimes, in our society of instant gratification, we want God to work that way too. I want it now and on my own time. But really, things don't work that way. Water eroding the Grand Canyon didn't happen overnight, and often God's work in our lives happens slowly as well. Accepting that most of life isn't in those huge moments is part of the conversion process. Even the liturgical year itself is mostly ordinary time. meaning that life is ordinary most of the time. However, that doesn't mean that there is no God or no conversion. There's a lot of hope in the everyday. So as you continue in adoration today, think about how life has been unexpectedly ordinary for you. How has God been working in the ordinary of your life? How can you allow the Spirit to direct you so that every aspect of your life has the pervasiveness of God?